A couple weeks ago, it was the amateur scout meetings taking place from CTC. Now the pro scouting meetings going on throughout the entirety of the week, gearing up for the offseason.
Yeah, I think it's a good time just for the staff to get together, kind of go over all the players that we've watched throughout the year, and just kind of gather everything and put it together so Steve and Rob can and Dave can make the right decisions going forward.
We really take a look at the whole year now. We met midterm, and what we typically do at midterm is do profiles for every team, strengths, weaknesses, what they're looking for at trade deadline, what are they looking for next year. So we're at that end of the year point. So we're doing end of the year profiles and more of the same, but really zeroing in on what's their final roster look like, what are they going to be, who their UFAs are, who their RFAs, who they think they'll sign or not sign. So we're putting it all together and sort of all of us getting a chance to look at all 32 teams.
And as for Rob DiMaio wrapping up his first season as Director of Player Personnel and Pro Scouting, he spoke about his role throughout the duration of the year and the messaging going into these meetings.
You know, with a new group, have to learn just what we have internally, you know, as far as the scouts that are doing the job. So that takes a little bit of time to get comfortable with that. But all in all, it was very good. I thought we made good decisions. The group was very professional, and you know, we made strategic moves that benefited the team down the stretch and towards the playoffs, so that was a big step for the organization.
And Steve Sterling once again looking to use his experience as a coach in the past into his messaging in these meetings and the way he analyzes players throughout the entirety of the year.
I think it's helped me. Again, I spent so much time coaching and then made the adjustment 8 years ago from coaching into scouting. And I'd had a little previous experience when I was working for the New York Islanders at the end of the season. They put me out and about, so I got a taste of scouting and looking at players. So that's helped me. But I think I look at it a little bit differently than the average scout because of the playing experience. I'm looking for details, where a defenseman positions himself, and some of those little details that the scout may not see or may not know. So I think that's helped, but there's been an adjustment for me. But all these years in hockey, I've seen a lot of changes. I think all for the good. The game's faster, more skilled. But it's been an evolution for me because, as you can see from the color of my hair, I'm old school. And so it's been, I've had to adapt. And fortunately, I've been able to do that.
And the success the Sens did have during the season in getting back to the playoffs also helping craft a plan for the pro scouts going into the offseason.
It's progression, and you know, we took a step last year, and we got to a point where we got into the playoffs, which was the goal, and but that's only the first step of it. So you know, moving forward, it's very important that we, you know, continue to build and add the pieces. The core group of our players is another year older, so that helps. They got a chance to experience playoff hockey, which is a huge thing, and now it's just you know, tinkering around the edges and, you know, seeing where we can improve the team.
You can see in the playoffs just how deep the rosters are that go a long way, that win. So how do we find those opportunities? We've got a good team now, a good team that made the playoffs. There's great players up and down the roster. The margins get thin. You're really looking for turning the dial a little bit, but you know, we're not missing big pieces in this roster. It's a playoff team, a really good young team that's exciting. That's where we're at now, where it's going to be those little tweaks that lead to 1 or 2 extra wins along the way that put us into home ice advantage or, you know, get us through round 1, round 2. It's the margins now, and that's where something like analytics can be really key when we're trying to get really precise and put players under the microscope. That's how we're going to find those little advantages.
One area that was touched upon as well throughout the entirety of the week was the analytical perspective that comes during these meetings and what Sean Tierney brings as head of analytics to the group.
Fortunately for us, and certainly for me at my age, having someone like Sean Tierney, who is really good at his job and able to put it in layman's terms for me, but it's made a difference because now when you're out scouting and looking at players and write a report and then make your report and Sean pulls up his profile, it's always interesting to see if I'm close or if he's close, and then if we aren't close, we have to hammer it out, who's right, who's wrong, but it's really made a difference.
I think it's a huge benefit. Sean does a great job, and he gives a lot of information on players, and then we kind of go against it with the eye test and what we see and what we know about the player. But it's a huge piece that I find very, very interesting, and I've learned a lot from Sean on that. And it's nice to compare notes on players sometimes and see if the numbers match up to what we see. And when they do, it's good to have that information.
When you're talking about Steve Sterling or Rob DeMaio, these are guys who spent a full life in hockey, and Steve, and Dale McTavish, all our scouts, they've lived a life in hockey, and analytics is something that's come in new. But they're very open-minded, and so for me, what I want to do is support what they see. The good scout catches the numbers just in the way that they're watching. They see it too. So the numbers are almost always going to line up with a good scout, and we've got great scouts who see the game. So usually I'm just backing them up. But then there's times where, players that we've got a few views on, but not a ton, or players that have, not had a chance to show what they can do. We've got an opportunity to identify players that have got more skills than maybe their team has gotten out of them. So the group is really good at letting other voices be part of it, so we can identify ways that we can make the team better.
And for Tim Pattison, who played part in both the amateur meetings a couple weeks ago and the pro meetings throughout the entirety of the week, he spoke about the importance of these meetings as a whole, gearing up for the off-season.
The guys that are out on the road working and grinding every day, they see a lot of games, they put in a lot of work, they gather a lot of information. That's a hard job. And then we sort of can help take that information and organize it, contextualize it, or help break it down for Steve to make the final decisions. But it's a group effort, I guess, is something I'll take from it, that everybody is playing a really important role.
He also provided his outlook on where the team and organization is at, eclipsing the goal of getting back to the playoffs.
Well, it's ascending, obviously. It was fantastic. It felt, having been around so long, I don't want to say the glory days, it's so long ago, but it feels like we're going back into the area where we're a perennial playoff team. We're not just hoping to get in. We're still getting better. Our core group reminds me a bit of, the early 2000s when we had a bunch of guys graduate from the American League at the same time and got better for a 5 to 8 year window, and we were a perennial contender. I hope we're on that path right now.
A successful week overall for the Scouts. They'll gear up for potential moves that come down the line in the summer, and free agency gearing up on July 1st. Back to the amateur scouting scene we go, though, for the Combine coming up in Buffalo next week. For Sens 360, I'm Jackson Starr.